Let's stop pretending these are just ordinary drills. When Pakistan takes to the skies with its new war machines, NATO isn't just watching with binoculars, it's watching with alarm, because behind every maneuver, every joint operation, every roar of a JF-17 or J-10C lies a deeper story. A nation rewriting the rules of air power without asking the West for permission. Pakistan's shifting strategic posture is at the heart of why NATO analysts are giving unusual attention to its ongoing air exercises. Traditionally, air drills were seen as routine military preparations, necessary for training, for showcasing readiness, but not necessarily earth-shaking for the wider global order. Yet, this time, NATO analysts see something different. Pakistan is not just flying aircraft in a vacuum. It is demonstrating a recalibration of its overall doctrine in response to a rapidly changing security environment. With a region as volatile as South Asia, where two nuclear-armed neighbors sit in a fragile balance, any shift in air strategy is more than symbolic. It reveals intent, capability, and preparation for contingencies that stretch beyond borders. Pakistan has long been positioned in a delicate equilibrium, managing its ties with the West while also cultivating partnerships with powers like China. Now, the strategic tilt seems less ambiguous. Its air exercises increasingly showcase doctrines, formations, and capabilities that indicate Pakistan is no longer hedging, but instead aligning itself with a new playbook, one that challenges the established dominance of Western military thinking in the region. NATO analysts understand that air power isn't merely about machines in the sky. It's about the messaging of deterrence and the rehearsal of future war scenarios. By carefully observing the tactical maneuvers, the types of aircraft used, and the scenarios Pakistan practices, they can see a shift from defensive postures to more assertive, flexible ones. This suggests Pakistan is preparing not just to withstand pressure, but to shape outcomes on its own terms. Such a recalibration matters for NATO because Pakistan sits at the crossroads of major global interests, from the Middle East to Central Asia. A Pakistan that demonstrates greater independence in doctrine and closer integration with non-Western partners creates ripple effects for NATO's own calculations in the region. It means that what once could be expected to fall within predictable boundaries is now moving into uncharted territory. The drills are therefore less about today's flying sorties and more about tomorrow's balance of power, and NATO observers cannot afford to ignore that. Pakistan's air exercises are drawing close observation from NATO analysts because they are no longer built around the conventional display of existing firepower, but around the integration of advanced platforms and technologies that mark a major shift in its air force's evolution. At the center of this transformation is the JF-17 Thunder Block III, an aircraft that Pakistan co-produces with China. Unlike the earlier variants, the Block III is fitted with cutting-edge avionics, active electronically scanned array (AESA) radar, and the ability to carry long-range standoff weapons, all of which significantly enhance its lethality and survivability in contested airspace. Alongside the JF-17, Pakistan has inducted the J-10C, a Chinese-built fighter that is already compared in capability to advanced Western jets. The symbolism of showcasing both aircraft in drills is powerful. It signals not only modernization, but also diversification away from a dependency on Western platforms. NATO analysts are particularly attentive to how these aircraft are employed in simulated combat scenarios, because their use reflects the training philosophy behind them. These aren't simply new machines, they represent new doctrines of employment that could change the way Pakistan plans its air operations in both defensive and offensive modes. The exercises also display Pakistan's ability to fuse indigenous capability with foreign-supplied technology in a way that maximizes cost-effectiveness without compromising combat credibility. Unlike Western powers that spend billions on fifth-generation jets, Pakistan is crafting a hybrid approach, upgrading homegrown platforms like the JF-17 while simultaneously securing high-end imports like the J-10C. This dual-track modernization means the country can field a larger combat-ready fleet without the financial burdens that often cripple defense budgets. For NATO, this is worth studying closely because it shows how a middle power state can leverage partnerships to achieve near-peer level capabilities in its region. The exercises highlight Pakistan's growing confidence in integrating electronic warfare systems, network-centric operations, and long-range precision strike capabilities, all of which indicate that it is preparing to fight in a modern, high-tech battle space. These developments alter the strategic equation in South Asia, particularly in relation to India, but they also send signals to NATO about the viability of non-Western defense ecosystems. For analysts, this raises questions about the balance of influence. If Pakistan can demonstrate credible modernization outside Western supply chains, it not only shifts power locally, but also inspires other states to explore similar alternatives. Thus, the integration of advanced platforms is not just a tactical upgrade for Pakistan, but a strategic statement with consequences NATO cannot afford to underestimate. The China factor in Pakistan's air exercises is one of the most important reasons NATO analysts are watching with such intensity, because it reflects more than just bilateral defense cooperation. It showcases how Beijing's strategic footprint is extending into South Asia through military partnerships. China's role in supplying advanced aircraft, like the JF-17 and the J-10C, has already redefined the capabilities of the Pakistan Air Force. But these exercises demonstrate something beyond the sale of platforms. They reveal how Chinese military doctrine, training standards, and tactical thinking are being transferred into Pakistan's operational framework. When NATO analysts examine the flight formations, the electronic warfare integration, or the use of advanced sensors and radar systems during the drills, they are not simply studying Pakistan's tactics. They are indirectly studying China's playbook being tested in an allied environment. This matters for NATO because it means that Beijing's approach to air power is no longer confined to its own borders, but is being practiced, refined, and stress-tested in partnership with another state, making Pakistan a kind of extension of China's strategic reach. Beyond technology transfer, the presence of Chinese strategic thinking in Pakistan's exercises also suggests a gradual shift in alliance dynamics. Pakistan is not only a consumer of Chinese defense products, but also a collaborator in developing and validating those systems under realistic conditions. Exercises that feature Chinese-origin aircraft and weapons are an opportunity for Beijing to evaluate how its platforms perform outside its own territory, in varied terrain, and under different operational doctrines. NATO observers know that every sortie flown and every system tested during these exercises provides data not only for Pakistan, but also for China, feeding into a cycle of iterative improvement. This is why NATO views these drills not as isolated events, but as nodes in a much larger strategic network. Furthermore, the optics of Pakistan's reliance on Chinese systems challenge Western defense influence. For decades, Western powers maintained dominance in global military aviation through exports and training programs. Now, by watching Pakistan train with and showcase Chinese assets, NATO sees evidence that Beijing is emerging as a credible alternative supplier and partner for states seeking independence from Western defense monopolies. This erosion of Western exclusivity is what makes the China factor so alarming for NATO analysts. It is not just about Pakistan upgrading its air force, it is about China embedding itself in the military DNA of a key regional power, and by extension reshaping the geopolitical chessboard in a way that NATO cannot ignore. Pakistan's air exercises are being watched with unusual attention by NATO analysts because they go far beyond traditional aerial drills and increasingly emphasize joint force interoperability, a concept central to modern warfare. In the past, military exercises often focused narrowly on showcasing the capability of a single branch of the armed forces. Today, Pakistan's training scenarios are visibly shifting toward coordinated operations that integrate air, ground, and even naval elements. This evolution is significant because it reflects an understanding that future conflicts will not be fought in isolation, but in a multi-domain environment where success depends on how well different branches can operate together under a unified command structure. NATO has built much of its own doctrine around precisely this concept, and seeing Pakistan rehearse these tactics signals that Islamabad is internalizing lessons from modern warfare that make it more agile, more resilient, and far more unpredictable to its adversaries. NATO analysts are paying attention to how Pakistan is weaving these joint elements into its exercises. For example, the way air squadrons coordinate with ground-based radar and surface-to-air missile units reveals how effectively the country can defend its skies under real combat conditions. Similarly, the synchronization of air strikes with simulated ground maneuvers shows how Pakistan plans to use its air force as a force multiplier in land battles. By rehearsing scenarios where multiple services work in tandem, Pakistan demonstrates an ability to shift from compartmentalized responses to fully integrated campaigns, which is a hallmark of modern military readiness. This is particularly important in South Asia's context, where any conflict would escalate quickly and demand seamless coordination across domains. NATO, which has long prided itself on mastering this level of interoperability, now sees Pakistan striving to close that gap, and that alone warrants careful scrutiny. Another factor driving NATO's concern is the potential influence of non-Western partners in shaping this joint force approach. With Chinese and Turkish military cooperation increasingly visible, Pakistan is not just imitating NATO-style integration, but developing hybrid models tailored to its own needs and geography. These exercises therefore serve as both training and experimentation, blending doctrines learned from external partners with indigenous concepts. For NATO, the implications are profound. Pakistan is positioning itself to conduct rapid multi-domain operations without leaning on Western training or systems. This creates a scenario where Pakistan's armed forces could pursue independent strategies with little predictability for NATO planners. It also raises the possibility that the tactics rehearsed in these drills might one day be shared with or adapted by other states aligned with Pakistan, further spreading doctrines that challenge Western dominance in the design of modern warfare. NATO analysts are also closely examining Pakistan's air exercises because they are not only military events but powerful instruments of regional and global signaling. Every maneuver, every display of technology, and every message released through media coverage is carefully designed to reach specific audiences. For India, these exercises are a direct reminder that Pakistan's Air Force is combat-ready and increasingly confident in its modernization drive. By flying advanced aircraft like the JF-17 Block 3 and the J-10C in simulated battle scenarios, Pakistan is essentially declaring that it has both the capability and the will to deter aggression and respond with strength. This signaling serves to bolster deterrence, while also reassuring domestic audiences that the state is investing in security and preparedness. For NATO analysts, the concern is that these signals are not limited to a regional rivalry, but extend outward to a broader geopolitical conversation where Pakistan is positioning itself as an actor with alternatives to Western defense ecosystems. To the United States and NATO, these exercises carry an indirect but unmistakable message. Pakistan is no longer dependent on Western defense partners for its survival or credibility. By leaning heavily on Chinese platforms and collaborating with countries like Turkey, Pakistan is telling the West that it has reliable alternatives. This undermines decades of Western leverage, where arms sales and training programs created long-standing dependencies. Now, through its exercises, Pakistan is broadcasting a new reality where it can function outside that orbit while still demonstrating credible military power. This is why NATO analysts see the drills not just as combat rehearsals, but as strategic communication campaigns. They are as much about shaping perceptions as they are about building readiness. Another layer of this signaling is directed toward the broader global south, where many states are increasingly skeptical of Western dominance. By showcasing how it can modernize and operate effectively through partnerships with non-Western allies, Pakistan is subtly positioning itself as a model for other nations seeking independence from NATO-centric defense structures. These drills become a statement of political defiance and strategic confidence, signaling to the world that Pakistan is comfortable charting its own course. For NATO, this raises alarms because it suggests a fragmentation of the global order it has long influenced. Each exercise that showcases Pakistani confidence is also an exercise in shifting perceptions of power away from Western-dominated norms. The implications are far-reaching, as signaling of this nature often precedes shifts in alliances, trade, and global security policies. NATO analysts therefore treat Pakistan's drills as more than simple military routines. They are coded messages in the language of power, and each one is being read carefully across capitals worldwide. NATO analysts are giving special attention to Pakistan's air exercises because they recognize the implications these drills carry for future conflict theaters well beyond South Asia. While Pakistan's primary concern is often portrayed as its tense relationship with India, the way it trains, equips, and evolves its air power is shaping doctrines that can be applied in multiple regions where global interests intersect. Pakistan has increasingly been exporting defense hardware, most notably the JF-17 Thunder, to countries in Africa, the Middle East, and potentially Southeast Asia. These exports are not simply about selling aircraft, they are about exporting doctrine, training modules, and combat strategies that originate in the very exercises NATO is monitoring. Every time Pakistan refines tactics in the skies over its own territory, it is laying the groundwork for how its partners may operate those same platforms in conflicts across other regions. For NATO, this carries significant weight because it means that doctrines outside Western influence are being disseminated globally, shaping theaters where NATO itself might one day become involved. Another concern is the adaptability of Pakistan's military strategy in hybrid conflict environments. The exercises increasingly simulate not only conventional air battles, but also complex scenarios involving electronic warfare, asymmetric threats, and multi-domain challenges. These are precisely the types of conflict NATO itself trains for, because modern wars are no longer linear. By practicing these scenarios, Pakistan is preparing for contingencies that could arise in conflict zones stretching from the Middle East to Africa, regions where its forces or its allies' forces may become involved. NATO analysts know that if Pakistan develops battle-tested doctrines in these areas, they could influence the course of conflicts where Western alliances already have stakes, thus complicating NATO's ability to maintain dominance. The growing partnership with China amplifies this concern further. If Pakistan uses its exercises as a testbed for Chinese systems and strategies, then those same doctrines could spread to future theaters of conflict where Chinese influence is rising. This would create situations where NATO might have to counter strategies not previously encountered in Western simulations, but already practiced extensively in Pakistan's environment. The global export of both platforms and doctrine effectively multiplies the impact of every Pakistani exercise, extending their reach far beyond local skies. NATO sees in these drills not just training for Pakistan's defense, but rehearsal for a new strategic reality where emerging alliances shape conflicts across continents. That is why the implications for future conflict theatres make these exercises so critical to monitor, because what begins as regional training could set the tone for how wars are fought in arenas central to NATO's own security interests. The real reason NATO analysts are glued to Pakistan's air exercises is simple. This is no longer about training, it's about transformation. Pakistan is signalling independence, integrating advanced technology, embracing Chinese doctrines, and exporting influence far beyond its borders. These exercises are not just about defending airspace, they are about reshaping the balance of power in a world where the West no longer has the monopoly on military innovation. And that, more than anything, is why NATO cannot afford to look away,